My wife and her financial advisor, lover, drained my $750,000 pension to nothing. Look, I'm 58 years old. I've been driving trucks for 30 years. I've seen every highway in America, slept in more truck stops than I can count, and I thought I knew what tired felt like. I was wrong. Real tired is driving 72 hours straight because you want to surprise your wife on your 30th anniversary. Real tired is your eyes burning, your back screaming, and your brain running on nothing but gas station coffee and hope. But I had that little velvet box in my jacket pocket, and I had this whole speech planned out in my head. 30 years. 3 decades. That's longer than most marriages last these days. Longer than most careers. Longer than some people live. If you really think about it. I bought the roses at a truck stop outside Pittsburgh. They weren't fancy. The petals were already starting to curl at the edges, and the cellophane wrapper had that cheap crinkle to it. But they were red, and they were roses, and I figured after 30 years, it's the thought that counts, right? Wrong again. The house was dark when I pulled onto our street in Columbus. It was just past midnight. I parked my rig 2 blocks away because I didn't want the engine noise to wake her up. I wanted to walk in quiet, maybe catch her reading in bed like she used to do when we were younger. Maybe she'd look up, surprised, and I'd get to see that smile. The real one. The one I fell in love with back when Reagan was president and gas was under $1. I walked those 2 blocks in the cold Ohio air, my knees popping with every step. 30 years of climbing in and out of a truck cab will do that to your joints. The velvet box felt heavy in my pocket, heavier than it should have been. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first clue, but I was too excited to notice. Too stupid. Too trusting. I stepped inside. The house smelled wrong. Not bad, just wrong. There was this cologne hanging in the air, something expensive and sharp that made my nose itch. Something I definitely didn't own. On the kitchen counter sat 2 wine glasses with dark red stains at the bottom. Good wine, probably. The kind that comes in bottles with French words on the label. Next to them was an ashtray with 3 cigars, but still sending up thin ribbons of smoke. I don't smoke cigars. Never have. My hand was still on the door handle. My brain was trying to make sense of what I was seeing, trying to come up with some innocent explanation. Maybe she had friends over. Maybe it was book club night. Maybe. That's when I heard the voices from upstairs. His voice came first. Deep, smooth, the kind of voice that sells things. The kind of voice that makes you sign paperwork you shouldn't sign. He said something about 6 more months. Something about aggressive investing. Something about my 401k being almost empty. My retirement fund. The money I'd been putting away since I was 28 years old. Every paycheck. Every bonus. Every tax return. $750,000. Last time I checked. My golden parachute. My finish line. My freedom. Almost empty. Then I heard her laugh. My wife's laugh. But not the laugh I knew. This was different. Lighter. Younger. Almost. The way she used to laugh when we first met, before life got complicated and bills got real. She said something I'll never forget. She called me an old dinosaur. Said the important thing was that I didn't notice anything until it was too late. Old dinosaur. I looked down at myself. My worn Carhartt jacket that smelled like diesel and rubber. My steel-toed boots with the cracked leather. My calloused hands that couldn't even hold a wine glass without looking stupid. The wilted gas station roses hanging from my fist like some kind of sad joke. She wasn't wrong. I was a dinosaur. A big, slow, outdated thing that didn't fit in the modern world anymore. Here's something they don't tell you about betrayal. They show it in movies like it's this big dramatic explosion. People screaming, dishes breaking, tears and confrontations, and somebody getting slapped across the face. That's not how it really happens. Real betrayal is quiet. Real betrayal is standing in your own kitchen, holding flowers you bought 3 states away, while your wife and her boyfriend talk about stealing your retirement like they're discussing the weather. Real betrayal is your heart not even racing. It's just this cold, heavy weight settling into your chest like a stone. I should have burst through that bedroom door. Should have grabbed him by his expensive collar and thrown him through the window. Should have screamed at her, demanded answers, made her explain how 30 years of marriage could end up here. But I didn't do any of that. You know what I did? I backed out of that house quieter than I came in, pulled the door closed with barely a click, walked back to my truck on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, sat in the driver's seat and stared at the dashboard for probably 20 minutes straight. The roses were still in my hand. I looked at them for a long time. Then I rolled down the window and tossed them into a storm drain, watched them disappear into the dark. The velvet box stayed in my pocket. I still have it, actually. Sometimes I open it just to remind myself how close I came to being even more of a fool than I already was. I drove to the Super 8 motel on the east side of town. The sign was half burnt out, so it just said Super. The guy at the desk didn't even look up from his phone when I paid cash for a week. Room 112 smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams, which felt appropriate. The bedspread had a pattern that probably seemed modern in 1987. There was a painting of a lighthouse bolted to the wall, like someone might steal it. I sat on that bed for hours. Didn't turn on the TV. Didn't take off my boots. Just sat there in the dark, thinking. My phone buzzed around 2 a.m. A text from Cynthia. Just got home from book club. Miss you. Drive safe. Heart emoji. Book club. Right. Here's what you learn after 3 decades of marriage. You learn someone's patterns, their rhythms, the way they breathe when they're actually sleeping versus when they're pretending to sleep, the way they text when they're lying versus when they're telling the truth. That text was a lie, but it was a confident lie, a practice lie, the kind of lie someone tells when they've been lying for a long time and gotten comfortable with it. 6 more months, the boyfriend had said. 6 more months of aggressive investing. How long had they been doing this? How long had I been the old dinosaur, too stupid to see what was happening right in front of my face? 3 years ago, Cynthia said we needed to be smarter with my retirement money. Said just letting it sit. There was leaving opportunities on the table. She found this financial advisor, Brian, through someone at her yoga class. Said he was brilliant with investments. Said he could maximize our returns. I met him once. Firm handshake. Perfect teeth. Expensive suit. He talked about portfolio optimization and aggressive growth strategies. Used a lot of words I didn't really understand, but nodded along to anyway. I signed some papers, gave him access to manage things, and went back to what I knew, driving. Every month he'd send these professional-looking reports, colorful charts, upward trending lines. Everything looked fine on paper. I trusted him because Cynthia trusted him. I trusted Cynthia because she was my wife. Turns out trust is just another word for blind. Around 4 a.m, I made a decision. I wasn't going to kick down that bedroom door. Wasn't going to scream or throw things or demand explanations. That's what they'd expect. That's what would give them a chance to spin some story, to manipulate, to make me feel like the crazy one. No, I was going to be smart about this. Cold, patient. But first, I needed time to think, time to plan, time to figure out exactly what they'd done and how bad it really was. I needed an alibi. I waited until 7 that morning to call her. Made sure my voice sounded rough, exhausted. Wasn't hard to fake, because I genuinely was exhausted, just not from driving. She picked up on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep, probably tired from her evening activities. I told her the transmission was acting up, gave her specific details about grinding noises and slipping gears to make it sound real. Said I'd barely made it to a truck stop in Indiana before things got bad. Said the mechanic couldn't even look at it for 3 days because they were backed up, and after that I had an urgent haul to California that dispatch specifically needed me for. Told her I'd be gone for a month, maybe longer. Told her I was heartbroken to miss our anniversary. Know what she said? She sighed. But it wasn't a disappointed sigh. It was a relieved sigh. The kind you make when a problem solves itself. She said it was okay. Said she understood. Said work was work and bills needed paying. Told me to be safe out there. Said she loved me. That last part stung worse than anything else. The casualness of it. The ease. Like lying to me was as natural as breathing. I told her I loved her too. And here's the thing. In that moment, I think I still did. You don't just turn off 30 years of love like a light switch. It doesn't work that way. Love dies slow. It starves. It suffocates. But it takes time. Right then, sitting in that motel room, holding that phone, I could feel it starting to die. That first cold seed of something else taking root where love used to be. Something harder. Something colder. Something that understood the rules had changed. I hung up and sat there in the dark, listening to trucks rumble past on the interstate outside. The sound was familiar, comforting, almost. My whole adult life had that sound as a soundtrack. The guy in the room next door was coughing. One of those deep, rattling coughs that says too many cigarettes and not enough health care. The walls were thin enough I could hear his TV through them. Some early morning news program talking about weather and traffic. Normal people doing normal things on a normal Wednesday morning. Except nothing was normal anymore. I had 1 month, 30 days where they thought I was somewhere else, hauling freight across the country, being the oblivious husband, the old dinosaur who didn't notice anything. 30 days to figure out what they'd done. 30 days to figure out how to make them pay. The morning sun was starting to come up, turning the cheap motel curtains orange. I could see dust floating in the light, could see the water stains on the ceiling, could see my reflection in the dark TV screen mounted to the wall. I looked old, tired, worn down by 3 decades of highway miles and broken sleep and gas station food. But I didn't look defeated. Not yet. My phone buzzed. A text from Cynthia. Just thinking about you. Miss you already. Drive safe out there. Heart emoji at the end. I stared at that message for a long time. Thought about all the other messages like it I'd gotten over the years. Thousands of them, probably. Little check-ins from the road. Little reminders that someone was waiting for me at home. How many of those had been lies? How long had this been going on? 6 more months, the boyfriend had said. Like they were on a timeline. Like they'd been planning this. How much of my life had been real, and how much had been a performance? I put the phone down. Didn't respond. Let her think I was busy with truck stuff, tired from the road, distracted by logistics. Let her feel safe. Outside, the Super 8 sign buzzed and flickered. Half the letters were burned out. Just said, Super now. Even the sign was broken, I thought. Even the sign was pretending to be something it wasn't. I lay back on that scratchy motel bedspread and stared at the ceiling. Didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. My mind was going too fast, running through everything I'd heard, everything I'd seen, try and make sense of it all. 30 years of marriage. 30 years of putting money away, being responsible, planning for future. And in 6 months, they were going to take it all. The thing about being a truck driver is you learn patience. You learn to wait. Wait for loads. Wait for traffic. Wait for weather to clear. Wait for mechanics to fix things that shouldn't have broken in the first place. You learn that rushing gets you nowhere. That the fastest way to a destination is often the slowest, most careful route. I wasn't going to rush this. I was going to wait. Watch. Learn exactly what they'd done. And then I was going to take everything from them, the same way they'd taken everything from me. But first, I needed to know what I was dealing with. First, I needed to see the damage. The war had started the moment I heard that bedroom conversation. But wars aren't won by charging in blind. They're won by the side that plans better, thinks harder, waits longer. I had 30 days. Time to get to work. That first week in the Super 8 was hell. Not the loud kind of hell. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind where you sit in a room that smells like old carpet and regret, staring at a laptop screen, and watch your entire future disappear one number at a time. I've never been good with technology. Give me a diesel engine, and I can diagnose problems by sound alone. Give me a spreadsheet, and I might as well be reading hieroglyphics. But I wasn't stupid. I knew how to log into my retirement account. I'd been doing it for years, checking maybe once every few months just to make sure things were still there. The motel Wi-Fi was terrible, kept disconnecting every few minutes. I took it as a sign. The universe giving me one last chance to stay ignorant, to go back to being the happy idiot who trusted his wife and his financial advisor and believed the world was fundamentally fair. I didn't take the hint. When that page finally loaded, when those numbers appeared on my screen, I just sat there, didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared. $750,000. That's what should have been there. 30 years of putting away 10% of every paycheck, every bonus, every tax refund that could have gone to a new TV or a vacation or literally anything else. 30 years of saying no to things I wanted so I could say yes to a future I'd earned. The screen showed 90,000. 90. I closed the laptop, opened it again. Maybe I'd read it wrong. Maybe there was a glitch. Maybe the website was showing me someone else's account by mistake. But no, there was my name, my social security number, my account, $660,000. Gone. I did the math in my head. That's what truck drivers do. We calculate distances and fuel costs and drive times without even thinking about it. 660,000 divided by 30 years. That's $22,000 a year. Divided by 12 months. $1,800 and change per month. For 30 years, I've been working an extra month every year for free. And I didn't even know it. The worst part wasn't the number. The worst part was the reports. I started digging through my email. Found every monthly statement Brian had sent me over the past 3 years. Opened them one by one. They were beautiful, professional, full of colorful charts and graphs that all pointed up. Each one had a summary at the top in big, bold letters. Growth this month, $12,000. Portfolio performance, exceeding benchmarks. Your retirement is on track, David. Lies, all lies, but they were convincing lies. The kind that make you feel smart for having trusted them. I'm not a financial guy. I don't understand derivatives or hedge funds or whatever other magic tricks Wall Street uses to move money around. But I understand patterns. I understand when something doesn't add up. So I started clicking through the detailed transactions. The stuff buried on page 7 of the PDF that nobody ever reads. That's where I found it. Hundreds of trades. Every single day. Buying stocks at one price. Selling them hours later for pennies more. Each trade generating fees. Commission fees. Transaction fees. Management fees. Advisory fees. Brian was churning my account. That's what they call it. Taking my money, moving it around like a shell game, and pocketing a cut every time the shells moved. The stock market could have tripled, and I still would have lost money because the fees were eating everything. And Cynthia knew, had to know. She'd given him the authorization. She'd signed the papers that let him do whatever he wanted with my retirement. They'd been stealing from me for 3 years, systematically. Methodically, and in 6 more months, they were going to finish the job. I sat on that motel bed and felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That was already broken. Something deeper. Some fundamental belief in fairness, in justice, in the idea that if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll be okay in the end. That belief died right there in room 112, between the painting of the lighthouse and the broken mini fridge. I couldn't hire a lawyer. Couldn't do anything. Every dollar I had was in accounts that Cynthia had access to. The checking account, the savings account, even the emergency fund. Joint accounts, all of them. I'd set it up that way years ago because that's what married people do. That's what trust looks like. Trust. That word again. If I touched any of that money now, she'd know something was up. She'd know I knew. And they'd finish draining everything before I could stop them. I was trapped, financially paralyzed, watching my future disappear in real time and completely powerless to do anything about it. 3 days went by like that. 3 days of sitting in that room, running the numbers over and over, looking for some angle I was missing, some way to fight back that didn't require money I didn't have. I wasn't eating much. The motel had a vending machine that took bills, but half the buttons didn't work. I survived on stale Cheetos and flat Coke. Lost maybe 10 pounds that week. Didn't even notice until my belt needed a new hole. The guy in the next room kept coughing. Same deep, rattling cough. I started to worry about him. Then I realized I was more concerned about a stranger's health than my own situation, which probably meant I'd hit some kind of bottom. That's when I remembered the storage unit. I'd been renting a 10 by 10 space at U-Store for probably 15 years. One of those orange industrial buildings off the highway where people keep things they don't want but can't throw away. Cost me $49 a month. It had my old tools, some furniture I'd inherited but never used, a few boxes of my mom's stuff that I'd never gotten around to going through after she passed. My mom, she died 4 years ago. Heart attack, quick and clean, the way she would have wanted it. I'd driven down to Florida, cleaned out her little apartment, and brought back what little she had. Been meaning to sort through it properly. Never did. Life got busy. Death has a way of getting filed under later. But now I was thinking about something she used to say. My mom grew up during the Depression, born in 1932. Watched her father lose everything when the banks failed. She'd told me stories about it when I was a kid, how they'd gone from comfortable to desperate in a matter of days, how her dad had trusted the bank with every cent, and the bank had rewarded that trust by closing its doors forever. It made her paranoid about money, not in a crazy way, in a careful way. She'd always kept cash hidden around the house. Not much. A 20 here, a 50 there. Emergency money that no bank could touch. Her favorite phrase, never put all your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket is run by someone in a suit. She'd said it so many times I'd stopped hearing it. Started rolling my eyes when she'd launch into one of her Depression-era warnings. Thought she was being old-fashioned, overly cautious, living in the past. Turns out the past had some pretty good lessons. I drove to the storage facility that afternoon. The lady at the desk recognized me, which was surprising since I only came by maybe once a year. She asked how I was doing. I said fine. She said that was good. These little interactions we have where nobody's really listening. Just going through the motions of being human. My unit was in the back corner, number 247. I had to jiggle the lock because it always stuck. Pulled up the rolling door with a screech that probably woke up mice in 3 adjacent units. It was dim inside, dusty, smelled like old cardboard in time. My tool chest, my workbench, a dresser that had been my grandmother's, 3 cardboard boxes with MOM written on them in Sharpie. I didn't even know why I'd come. What was I looking for? What did I think I'd find? But I pulled down the first box anyway. On top was her old apron, the kind from the 50s, with a floral pattern that had faded to almost nothing. She'd worn it every day when I was growing up, cooked every meal in it. It still smelled like her kitchen, cinnamon and vanilla and something else I couldn't name, the smell of safety, of home. I held it up to my face without really thinking about why, and that's when I felt it. The lining was uneven, lumpy, like something was sewn inside. My hand shook as I found my pocket knife, one of those old Swiss Army jobs I've been carrying since I was 20. I carefully worked the blade through the stitching along the hem, and out fell a stack of papers. Old papers, yellow with age, folded carefully. I spread them out on the dusty floor of that storage unit. United States Savings Bonds. Series E. The kind they don't even make anymore. There had to be 30 of them, maybe 40. Each one filled out in my mother's careful handwriting. Each one made out to David James Carter. Each one with a note in the memo line, for my son's rainy day. I just stared at them. My knees were on cold concrete. My hands were shaking. I felt tears coming, and I didn't even try to stop them. She'd been buying these for years. Decades, probably. A little here, a little there, squirreling away money that nobody knew about. Money that survived the nursing home costs and the medical bills and everything else that eats away at old people's savings. She'd hidden them in her apron, the one thing she knew I'd keep, the one piece of her I wouldn't throw away. She'd been dead 4 years, and she was still taking care of me. The bank teller's name was Jennifer. Young girl, maybe 25. She looked at those old bonds like I'd just handed her the Dead Sea Scrolls. She called over her manager. He called over his manager. Eventually, there were 4 people standing around my pile of yellowed paper, consulting computers, and pulling out reference books that probably hadn't been touched in years. Series E bonds, they told me, stopped being issued in 1980, but they keep earning interest for 30 years after that. Some of mine have been earning interest since the 70s. They ran the calculations, added up face values and interest rates and maturity dates, and all sorts of math I didn't understand. The total came to $119,843. Jennifer looked at me with something like awe, said I could deposit it all right now if I wanted, said it would clear immediately because Treasury bonds are backed by the federal government. I asked her if inheritance money was considered marital property in a divorce. She said no. Inheritance was separate property, belonged only to the person who inherited it. I signed the papers. $120,000. Give or take. Money that Cynthia didn't know about. Money that Brian couldn't touch. Money that was mine and mine alone. I sat in my truck in that bank parking lot for maybe an hour. Just sat there, watching people go in and out, living their normal lives, depositing paychecks and withdrawing grocery money, and doing all the mundane things that make up a regular Tuesday afternoon. My phone buzzed. Text from Cynthia. Hope you're having a good day out there. Thinking about you. Thinking about me. Right. Probably thinking about what they do with the last $90,000. Maybe a Caribbean vacation. Maybe a down payment on a condo somewhere nice. Maybe just blow it all on wine and cigars and expensive cologne. I looked at that text for a long time. Then I looked at the bank receipt in my other hand. Proof that I had $120,000 in an account that nobody knew about. My mom had died 4 years ago, but she just reached out from the grave and handed me a weapon. Not money. Not really. Money is just paper. Just numbers on a screen. What she'd given me was options. Power. The ability to fight back. She'd given me a chance. I started the truck. Drove back to the Super 8. Room 112 didn't seem quite so depressing anymore. The water-stained ceiling looked almost quaint. The painting of the lighthouse looked almost hopeful. I had 3 weeks left on my alibi. 3 weeks where they thought I was hauling freight across the Midwest, tired and oblivious and trusting. 3 weeks to figure out exactly how to use this gift my mother had left me. I opened my laptop. The Wi-Fi was still terrible, but I was patient now. I had time. I had money. I had purpose. The search engine cursor blinked at me, waiting. I thought about what I needed. Not a divorce lawyer. Not yet. First, I needed to know exactly what they'd done. Every transaction. Every transfer. Every lie written down in black and white. I needed someone who could follow money trails. Someone who could turn suspicions into evidence. Someone who could look at 3 years of financial statements and tell me not just that I'd been robbed, but exactly how, when, and by whom. I typed slowly, carefully. Forensic accountant, Ohio. Hit enter, and waited for the war to really begin. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Cynthia. Miss you so much. Can't wait until you're home. I stared at those words. Felt nothing. The love that had been dying since that night in our bedroom was finally gone. What was left was colder, harder, more focused. I texted back, miss you too. Work's keeping me busy. Talk soon. Let her think she was safe. Let them both think they'd gotten away with it. My mom used to say something else, usually right after the bit about eggs and baskets. She'd say, the best revenge is living well. But the second best revenge is making sure the people who wronged you live poorly. She'd laugh when she said it, like it was a joke. I wasn't laughing anymore, but I was finally ready to fight. I found Wolf through a law firm website at 2 a.m. His profile picture looked exactly like you'd expect a forensic accountant to look. Steel-rimmed glasses, gray suit, expression that suggested he'd seen every type of financial crime and wasn't impressed by any of them. His bio said he specialized in fraud investigation, asset tracing, and expert witness testimony. Perfect. His rates were $300 an hour. Most people would have looked at that number and walked away. But I had my mom's money burning a hole in my pocket and 3 weeks of alibi time left. I could afford to do this right. I called his office the next morning. His secretary asked what this was regarding. I told her I had $120,000 and evidence of retirement fund fraud. She put me through immediately. Wolf's voice was exactly what I expected. Dry, professional, bored until I mentioned the dollar amounts involved. We met that afternoon at a Denny's off Interstate 71. Neutral ground. He wore the same gray suit from his photo. I wore my work jacket because it was all I had. He ordered coffee. Black. Didn't touch the menu. I slid a folder across the table. Inside was everything I had. My 401k statements. The monthly reports Brian had been sending. My own notes about what I'd overheard that night. Wolf opened the folder. Started reading. His expression didn't change, but his eyes got sharper, more focused, like a hunting dog catching a scent. After maybe 5 minutes, he looked up at me. He asked if my wife had power of attorney over my retirement accounts. I said yes. He asked if the financial advisor was romantically involved with my wife. I said yes. He asked if I had proof of that relationship. I told him I'd heard them talking, heard them planning, heard everything. Wolf leaned back in the vinyl booth, took a sip of his coffee. Then he smiled for the first time since I'd met him. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a smile of someone who'd just been handed a puzzle and already knew how to solve it. He told me his fee would be $20,000 for 3 weeks of work, half up front, half on delivery. He'd trace every transaction, find every hidden account, document every fraudulent trade, build a case so airtight that a first-year law student could win with it. He said people think financial fraud is complicated, said it's usually not, said thieves are lazy and arrogant, said they always leave a trail because they think they're smarter than everyone else, said Brian and Cynthia sounded exactly like every other fraud case he'd investigated, smart enough to steal, too dumb to hide it properly. I wrote him a check right there in that Denny's. $10,000. My hand shook a little, but I got it done. We shook hands. His grip was firm, professional. He told me to keep doing exactly what I'd been doing. Keep calling my wife. Keep playing the role of the oblivious husband. Give him 3 weeks, and he'd hand me everything I needed to destroy them both. I believed him. That night, I called Cynthia at 9 o'clock. Same time I've been calling every night. Routine is important when you're lying. Keeps things predictable. Keeps people from asking questions. She picked up on the second ring. Asked how my day went. I told her the truck was giving me problems again. Said the California delivery got delayed because of some paperwork issue. Said I was tired, and the food at truck stops was getting old. All lies. Every word. But they were good lies. Detailed lies. The kind that sound true, because they're boring. She made sympathetic noises. Said she missed me. Said she couldn't wait until I was home. Said she loved me. I said I loved her too. Wondered if Brian was there listening. Wondered if they laughed about it after we hung up. The old dinosaur. So easy to fool. Let them laugh. Let them think they'd won. 3 weeks. Wolf worked fast. He'd call me every few days with updates. Always professional. Always factual. Never emotional about it. This was just a job to him. Just another fraud case in a career full of fraud cases. But to me, every update was a knife twisting deeper. He found the churning first. Said Brian had been doing it almost from day one. Buying and selling the same stocks dozens of times a day. Each trade generating commissions. Each commission eating away at my retirement like termites in wood. The stock market had actually gone up during those 3 years. My portfolio should have grown. Instead, it had been systematically dismantled. Death by 1,000 cuts, Wolf called it. Said it was textbook fraud. Said Brian would lose his license for sure. Might face criminal charges. Good, I thought. I hope he does. Then Wolf found the offshore account. The Cayman Islands. Of course it was the Cayman Islands. Where else do people hide stolen money? The account was registered under a business name. C&B Horizons LLC. C for Cynthia. B for Brian. They hadn't even tried to be creative about it. Wolf traced wire transfers going back 18 months. Regular deposits. Always just under $10,000, because anything over that triggers automatic reporting to the IRS. They've been careful about that much at least. Added up to almost $400,000. $400,000 of my retirement, sitting in an offshore account under their names. Wolf asked if I wanted him to notify the authorities. I said not yet. Said I wanted to handle this my way first. He understood. The third week was the worst. Not because of what Wolf was finding. Because of the phone calls. Every night. Same time. Same lies. Cynthia would ask how I was doing. I'd say tired. She'd say she missed me. I'd say I missed her too. She'd tell me about her day. Book club. Yoga class. Lunch with friends. More lies. All of it. While she was telling me about book club, Brian was probably in our bed. While she was describing her yoga class, she was probably checking their offshore account balance. Every word felt like acid in my mouth. But I kept it up, kept playing the role. The faithful husband, the hard-working trucker, the man who trusted his wife. And every night after we hung up, I'd sit in that motel room and imagine their faces when they finally found out that I knew, when they realized the old Dinosaur wasn't as stupid as they thought. That's what kept me going, the promise of that moment. Wolf delivered the report on a Thursday afternoon. Same Denny's, same booth, different coffee. This time he had a briefcase. 207 pages. Printed and bound. Professional quality. Could have been submitted to the Supreme Court, and they would have taken it seriously. Transaction logs. Bank statements. Wire transfer records. Email correspondence that he'd somehow obtained between Brian and his offshore bank. Digital signatures showing that Cynthia had personally authorized every fraudulent transfer. It wasn't just evidence. It was a murder weapon. Wolf walked me through the highlights, showed me the pattern of churning, showed me the offshore transfers, showed me the electronic signatures that proved Cynthia wasn't just complicit. She was an active participant. She clicked the authorization button on every single theft. Then he looked at me over his coffee and said something I'll never forget. He said this wasn't just fraud. This was conspiracy. This was wire fraud across state lines. This was theft of retirement funds, which carries enhanced penalties. This was enough to put them both in federal prison if the prosecutors wanted to make an example. But, he said, if I wanted to handle it civilly instead, if I wanted to destroy them financially rather than criminally, this report would do that too. Any divorce court would give me everything. Any civil court would award massive damages. I could take their house, their cars, their future earnings, everything. My choice. I paid him his final $10,000, thanked him, shook his hand again. He told me one more thing before he left. Said he'd been doing this work for 23 years. Said he'd seen hundreds of fraud cases. Said the ones that bothered him most weren't the complicated ones, weren't the clever ones. They were the cases like mine, where ordinary people who'd worked their whole lives got robbed by people they trusted, people they loved. Said there was something especially cruel about that, something that made him glad he'd chosen his career path. Then he got in his sensible sedan and drove away. Left me sitting in that booth with a briefcase full of evidence and 3 more days on my alibi. 3 more days of pretending. 3 more phone calls. 3 more chances to hear Cynthia's voice telling me she loved me while she robbed me blind. I could do 3 more days. I'd already done 3 weeks. The last phone call was on Sunday night, day 29 of my month away. I was supposed to be finishing my California delivery, supposed to be heading home in a couple days. Cynthia sounded excited, said she couldn't wait to see me, said she'd miss me so much. Asked what I wanted for dinner, my first night back. I told her not to worry about cooking. Said I'd probably be too tired to eat much anyway. Said I just want to collapse into bed and sleep for a week. She laughed. Said that sounded perfect. Said she'd take good care of me. Sure she would. Right up until the moment the process server arrived. We said our goodbyes. I love you. I love you too. Talk soon. Drive safe. I hung up the phone and felt nothing. Whatever love had been there was completely gone now, replaced by something colder. Something that knew exactly what it was going to do and felt no guilt about it. Monday morning, I didn't drive home. I drove to the law offices of Morrison, Chun and Associates in downtown Columbus. They specialize in high-asset divorces and civil litigation. I'd made an appointment under a fake name using my mom's maiden name. The lawyer who met with me was named Patricia Morrison, senior partner, mid-50s. Had that look of someone who'd fought a lot of battles in courtrooms and won most of them. I handed her Wolf's report, told her my story, showed her everything. She read for 40 minutes straight, didn't say a word, just read, and occasionally made notes on a legal pad. When she finished, she looked up at me with something like amazement. She said in 30 years of practicing law, she'd never seen fraud this well documented. Said most cases are he said, she said. Said this was different. This was ironclad. This was the kind of evidence prosecutors dream about. She asked what I wanted. I told her I wanted a divorce. Wanted everything. The house, the cars, my full retirement or what was left of it. Wanted Cynthia to get nothing, not a penny. And I wanted to sue them both, Brian and Cynthia. Civil court, fraud, conspiracy, theft. I wanted $700,000. The full amount they'd stolen, including what they'd already moved offshore. Morrison smiled, said she could do that, said she could do all of that, said it would be expensive. Divorce plus civil litigation, maybe $50,000 in legal fees by the time it was done. I wrote her a check for $25,000. Retainer, half of what was left of my mom's money. We shook hands. She said she'd file everything tomorrow. Said process servers would deliver the papers by Wednesday. Asked where I wanted them served. I said serve Cynthia at her work. Serve Brian at his office. Maximum embarrassment. Maximum impact. Morrison nodded. Said she liked my style. I spent those 2 days in my truck. Not driving. Just sitting in parking lots. Waiting. I thought about a lot of things. Thought about 30 years of marriage. Thought about all the times I'd trusted Cynthia with decisions because I was too busy working. Thought about how many opportunities I'd missed to see what was really happening. But mostly I thought about my mom. She'd been dead 4 years. Never met Brian. Never knew about any of this. But somehow she prepared me for it anyway. Hidden those bonds in her apron. Left me a message from beyond the grave. Never trust all your eggs to one basket. She'd grown up in the Depression, lost everything once, spent her whole life making sure she'd never be helpless again. And now, for years after her death, she was still protecting her son. I wish I could have told her thank you. Told her I understood now what she'd been trying to teach me all those years. That sometimes the world is cruel. That sometimes the people you trust will hurt you. That you have to protect yourself because nobody else will. But I couldn't tell her. So instead, I was going to use her gift to fight back, to take everything from the people who try to take everything from me. She would have approved, I think. Wednesday afternoon, I got 2 phone calls within 5 minutes of each other. First was Morrison. Said the papers had been served. Cynthia had been called to HR at her accounting firm. Process server waiting. She'd been handed a divorce petition plus a civil lawsuit for $700,000. Fraud, conspiracy, theft, everything. Morrison said Cynthia had apparently started crying right there in the HR office. Then she called Brian, who was, at that exact moment, being served at his office downtown. Same papers, same charges. Morrison asked if I was satisfied. I said very. Second call was Cynthia. She was screaming, crying, demanding to know where I was. Demanding to know what I was doing, calling me every name in the book. I let her yell for about 30 seconds. Then I spoke. I told her I'd been home that night. Our anniversary. Heard everything. Every word about the aggressive investing. Every laugh about the old dinosaur. Everything. Then I told her about Wolf. About the 200-page report. About the evidence of churning and offshore accounts. And her personal electronic signatures on every fraudulent transaction. Told her she wasn't going to get half of anything. Told her I was taking everything. The house, the cars, every penny. Told her she and Brian better start looking for cheap apartments because they were both going to need them. She started begging. Said it wasn't what I thought. Said she could explain. Said Brian had manipulated her. Said she still loved me. I hung up. The divorce court hearing was in Ohio's Franklin County. Ohio is what they call an equitable distribution state. Means the court divides assets fairly, not necessarily equally, especially when one party has committed fraud. Cynthia's lawyer argued she deserved half of everything. Half the house. Half of what was left of my retirement. Said 30 years of marriage meant something. Said she contributed to our life together. My lawyer handed the judge Wolf's report. The judge was a woman named Diane Kemper, early 60s. Severe expression. Had probably heard every sob story and excuse in the book over her career. She read the executive summary. Then she flipped through the evidence. Transaction records, bank statements, digital signatures. When she looked up at Cynthia, her expression could have frozen hell. She told Cynthia that this wasn't just marital misconduct. This was economic murder. Said asking for half of my retirement was like burning down a house and demanding half the insurance money. Said Cynthia would receive nothing. Zero. Not from the retirement fund. Not from the house. Not from anything. She granted the divorce. Gave me sole ownership of the house. Told Cynthia she had 30 days to remove her personal belongings. Then she said something else. Said she was forwarding Wolf's report to the county prosecutor's office. Said they might want to look into criminal charges. Cynthia went pale. Her lawyer looked sick. I felt nothing. The civil trial took longer. 3 months of depositions and discovery and legal maneuvering. Brian's lawyers tried everything. Tried to claim I'd authorized the aggressive trading strategy. Tried to say the offshore account was for tax purposes. Tried to argue that losses happen in investing. My lawyers buried them under evidence. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Came back with a verdict. Fraud. Conspiracy. Breach of fiduciary duty. $700,000 in damages. Plus interest. Plus penalties. Plus my legal fees. The SEC launched their own investigation. Revoked Brian's licenses. Banned him from the securities industry for life. He declared bankruptcy 3 weeks later. Said he had no assets. Everything was gone. Spent or hidden or just disappeared. But the judgment still stood. $700,000 owed. They'd have to pay it eventually or spend the rest of their lives dodging garnishments and liens. 6 months after the verdict, I found out Brian's house was in foreclosure. Turns out he'd mortgaged it to the hilt trying to hide assets. Missed payments while trying to keep his offshore money offshore. The bank didn't care about his excuses. They wanted their money. Foreclosure auction was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. County courthouse steps. Standard procedure. I showed up wearing my work jacket. The same one I'd been wearing that night. The one that smelled like diesel and broken promises. Cynthia and Brian were there. Standing off to the side. She was crying. He looked defeated. Both of them 10 years older than they'd been a year ago. They didn't see me at first. I stayed in the back of the small crowd, watching. The auctioneer started the bidding at the amount owed to the bank, $240,000. The house was probably worth $400,000 in a normal sale. But this wasn't a normal sale. Nobody bid. Nobody wanted a house with that much baggage and legal drama attached to it. The auctioneer called out one more time. Going once. Going twice. I raised my hand. That's when they saw me. Brian's face went white. Cynthia looked like she might faint. The auctioneer asked if I was bidding the opening amount. I said yes. $240,000. Paid with a cashier's check I'd already prepared. No other bidders. Sold to me. Just like that, I owned Brian's house. The house he'd bought with my stolen retirement money. The house where he'd probably planned his whole life with Cynthia. The house that was supposed to be their fresh start. Now it was mine. I gave them 30 days to vacate. Same as Cynthia had gotten for our old house. Seemed fair. They'd make it easy. Left the place trashed. Holes in the walls. Carpet ruined. Appliances missing. Didn't matter. I hired contractors. Fixed it up. Turned it into a rental property. Got a nice family in there now. School teachers. 2 kids. They take good care of the place. Pay rent on time. Everything a landlord could want. The rent covers the mortgage I took out to buy the place, plus a little extra. Turns out I'm pretty good at being a landlord. I sold our old house, the one Cynthia and I had shared for 30 years. Didn't want to live there anymore. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. Took the money and bought a small place on Lake Erie. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms. Small dock. Enough space for me and my thoughts. Bought myself a fishing boat. 20-footer. Nothing special, but it runs good. Spend most mornings out on the water now. Just me and the fish and the sunrise. Retirement looks different than I thought it would, but it's not bad. I heard through Morrison that Cynthia and Brian are still together. Guess love conquers all. Or maybe they're just stuck with each other now. Both of them broke. Both of them unhireable in their fields. Both of them trying to rebuild from nothing. Someone told me they're working at a Flying J truck stop off Interstate 70. Night shift, cleaning bathrooms and restocking shelves and serving coffee to drivers who treat them like they're invisible. I stopped in there once. About 3 months ago. Needed gas anyway. Figured I'd see for myself. There they were. Cynthia behind the register. Brian mopping floors in the back. Both wearing those polyester uniforms that never quite fit right. Both looking tired in a way that goes deeper than just lack of sleep. Cynthia saw me. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, fear, shame, anger, resignation. I ordered a coffee. Black. Same way Wolf used to drink it. She rang it up without saying a word. Hands shaking a little as she made change. I took my coffee and walked out. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The look on her face said everything that needed saying. Sometimes I think about that night. The anniversary that never happened. The roses I threw away. The velvet box still sitting in my drawer. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never come home. If I'd called like I was supposed to. If I'd stayed oblivious for those last 6 months until they drained everything and disappeared. But mostly I think about my mom. About her hiding those bonds in her apron. About her Depression-era wisdom that seemed paranoid until it saved my life. She used to say the best revenge is living well. Used to laugh when she said it. I'm not laughing, but I am living well. Got my little house on the lake. Got my boat. Got my coffee in the morning and my sunset in the evening. Got my rental property, making money. Got my pension finally sorted out with help from the court judgment. It's not the retirement I planned. Not the life I expected. But it's mine. All mine. Nobody can take it from me. And sometimes, when I'm out on the water watching the sun come up, I raise my coffee mug to the sky for my mom, who taught me that dinosaurs don't go extinct. They just learn to adapt